Well, in the rush to take advantage of the federal government's push to produce more ethanol, rural communities across the country, including some here in Oklahoma, have worked diligently to open a plant of their own. And while several of these plants did go online last year, a similar number have halted construction. Yet, as Russ Joel reports, while the short-term ethanol bubble may have burst, long-term opportunities still exist.
It was the promise of a new beginning, the dawning of a new age in American energy. Ethanol, that miraculous hydrocarbon that answered the prayers of environmentalists far and wide and made the dream of an eco-friendly auto fuel a reality. Yet plants sit idle, rail cars unfilled, and the dream of an ethanol boom in Oklahoma remains just that.
There have been 3 or 4 attempts to build a plant in the state of Oklahoma.
While there are plenty of reasons as to why this boom turned into a bust, the biggest reason lies just outside your front door.
Worldwide credit crisis, recession, declining oil and gas prices have made it extremely difficult to obtain necessary capital to move the industry forward.
Gary Bledsoe is a consultant to the agriculture industry and says that capital-intensive projects such as ethanol refineries have trouble getting started in a time when that very capital is harder and harder to come by.
Typically, in most cases, trying to obtain that kind of capital in the state of Oklahoma has been very difficult. And in fact, oftentimes a project of that magnitude requires that any industry go out of state to find a lead bank.
A typical ethanol plant requires about $2.25 of startup capital per each gallon of ethanol it hopes to produce each year. For one such facility proposed in the town of Blackwell, this translated into a roughly $100 million investment for a 44 million gallon facility. And in a time when banks are clamping down on home mortgages worth less than 1% of that amount, securing the necessary capital became an unobtainable goal.
When our industry was trying to flourish, so to speak, a year or so ago, the difficulties we were encountering going out of state trying to find financing is that this banking industry was already in a downturn. Okay? Another problem was that most of those banks already felt like they had a solid portfolio of ethanol production, really didn't want any more.
As if securing financing for these projects wasn't problem enough, Oklahoma's ethanol industry faced another formidable foe in its quest for growth: media pressure from competing energy sources.
The people who don't want the change, who don't want renewable fuels, are certainly working their hardest to cast doubts on the part of the consumer.
Martha Schlichter is a vice president with Illinois-based GTL Resources and believes that Oklahoma's seedling ethanol industry was smothered by an overdose of public criticism.
Biofuels, of course, are having an impact on oil fuels, on oil, because they take away from the need for gasoline. That has created a reduction in the price of gasoline, but we didn't hear about that. We instead heard about the increases in food price, and they were attributed to corn price.
A phenomenon which also raised objections with Oklahoma's largest agricultural sector.
The livestock industry is a large consumer, obviously, of feed or grains. They like a lower or cheaper grain price. And so from their standpoint, they would like to see less ethanol production.
But in spite of strong media opinions, most experts, including Schlichter, agree that the ultimate decision about ethanol use should be made not by the companies, but by the consumers.
Let the consumer have ethanol at the pump. Let them have E85 at the pump. Let them see that it can be provided to them at a discount to gasoline, and let them make the choice of what they want.
Putting the fate of the biofuel industry back in the hands of those whom it serves.
Now, some are taking advantage of this downturn. Venezuela's Valero Energy Corporation has spent over $280 million to buy 5 bankrupt ethanol plants in the Midwest at a cost industry insiders estimate is just about 1/4 of what they're really worth.